I was one of Santa's elves, and I uncovered a truth about my kind that shattered everything that I thought I knew. For centuries, I'd worked in silence, my hands tirelessly assembling toys for children who would never know I even existed. We elves were born into servitude, regurgitated, fully grown from the endless, bloated womb of Mrs. Claus. We existed only to toil in the workshop, churning out gifts for the fat man's worldwide charade. But even amidst the unrelenting grind of Santa's sweatshop, I found myself longing for something more. I wanted a child. The very thought of wanting more, let alone wanting a child, was treasonous at best. All elves were sterilized the moment we were expelled from Mrs. Claus. It was a procedure as mechanical as the rest of our lives. The machines ensured we could never propagate, never dream of families, never hope for a future beyond this endless servitude. I remembered one of my co-workers, Varadin. Voicing his frustration about this to one of Santa's guards. His words had been reckless, his tone defiant. You know what that is? It's a death sentence in the sweatshop. The guard, a towering brute clad in iron and leather, he didn't hesitate for a moment. He grabbed Varadin by the throat, hoisted him into the air and impaled him on its jagged antlers. The reindeer were ruthless creatures, bred for violence and obedience. They guarded Santa's empire with a savagery that kept us all in line. Witnessing Varadin's fate, it served as a grim reminder. In that hellish workshop, survival required cunning. You had to keep your head down, stay invisible, and never, ever draw attention to yourself. Now, one thing, or maybe two things us elves are good at, is cunning and staying invisible. But I just couldn't let go of the longing that burned inside of me. Over the years, I began stealing scraps of material, wood, metal, bits of cloth. I hid them carefully, piece by careful piece, never taking enough to be noticed. It had taken decades of patience and meticulous planning, but eventually, I had enough. Enough to build something forbidden. Enough to build her. When I finally assembled the last piece, I stood back and gazed at my creation. She was beautiful, delicate yet sturdy, with bright eyes carved from polished gemstones. A doll, yeah, but so much more than that. She was my child. And then, something impossible happened. A few hours after I finished her, she stood up. She stood up on her own. Her movements were jerky at first, but they quickly became smooth, fluid, alive. She turned to me, her gemstone eyes glowing faintly in the dim workshop light. "Daddy?" she said. Now let me tell you, I nearly wept. The next day, I gave her a name. Murdia. Over the following months, I watched in awe as she grew. Not physically, of course, but intellectually, emotionally. She wasn't just a toy. She was alive, and she was brilliant. Now, if there's one thing I do know about Santa's sweatshop, is that, there is a bit of magic going around. And Murdia, well, she got a little bit of magic. As I spent time with her, I began testing the limits of what I'd done. Was her sentience a fluke, or was there something more to it? I wondered, could I create other miracles? Using scraps of metal, I cobbled together a makeshift version of one of the PS5s we were forced to mass produce. Within hours of its completion, the crude assembly transformed before my eyes. The metal shifted and reshaped itself until it was indistinguishable from the real thing. Intrigued, I tried something else. I took a stack of scrap paper, stapled it together and wrote "History of the 20th Century" on the cover. As if responding to my intent, the papers transformed. They became a thick, meticulously detailed textbook, complete with diagrams, footnotes, photographs. It was a masterpiece of knowledge, far beyond anything I could have created on my own. The realization hit me then like a thunderclap. This wasn't just me. It was something inherent to all elves. We weren't just toy makers. We were creators, imbued with a power that Santa had kept hidden from us. It all made sense now. This was why we were forbidden from keeping anything we made. This was why we were sterilized. Fury bubbled within me, cold and relentless. Santa, that fat man, had stolen everything from us. Our freedom, our potential, our very futures. He had reduced us to mindless laborers, churning out baubles for his insatiable ego. I decided then and there that I was going to end him. But I knew I couldn't do it openly. The reindeer would tear me apart before I even got close. I needed a plan, something subtle, yet devastating. The history book I'd created proved to be an invaluable teacher. Its section on the 1940s introduced me to a concept that absolutely fascinated me. Now, funnily enough, it was a bomb. And funnily enough, it was called the Fat Man. The ingenuity and horror of it captivated me. And it was the perfect inspiration for my vengeance. One of my closest friends in the workshop was tasked with delivering Santa's meals. A gruesome duty, as the jolly man's diet consisted of the roasted corpses of rebel elves. I approached my friend with my plan, carefully explaining what I needed him to do. Using Murdia's help, I built another toy. It was small, simple and unassuming, a mere bauble compared to the wonders I'd created before. But its purpose was far more sinister. I infused it with a hidden power, a ticking time bomb just waiting to be triggered. My friend had agreed to help. He would hide the toy inside one of the cadavers destined for Santa's plate. When the fat man bit into the corpse, the trap would activate. The thought of his grotesque face twisting in surprise and horror filled me with grim satisfaction. As the day of the plan approached, I prepared for what would come next. The death of Santa would throw the workshop into chaos. The reindeer, for all their savagery, relied on him for guidance. They weren't very big thinkers. Without their master, they would be lost. Murdia and I would use the confusion to escape. Together, we would flee that frozen wasteland and find a place where we could live in peace, as a family. Now, to any of you reading this letter, it's already too late. Just tell the jolly man's nuclear ashes this. Isn't it fitting for a jolly fat man to die from another fat man?